Hello, and welcome to episode 20 of the What If South is Up podcast, where we talk about the ups and downs of creating worlds from scratch and all the misadventures we experience along the way. In a nutshell, how to wing it like an author. My name is Xtina Lefebvre, and I'm in the middle of building my first world. It's kind of like it is a parallel Earth where colonization never happened. And I'm still writing my first book. You guys don't give me no crap. I know, I'm still doing it. And the working title is Cogs and Arrows. And with me today is my very kind, remember I said that, very kind writing partner and friend, Mr. Derrick Hall.
I've been called funny and kind more than once in the last couple of days, and neither one of them are true. However, I am Derrick Hall, author and creator of the Crimson Prophecy series, of which 2 novels and 2 companion novellas are available over in Bezos Town on the Amazons. So, Xtina, what are you drinking today?
I have dipped into my husband's birthday stash.
Birthday stashes are good.
Yes, it is a Vermont maple bourbon, and I'm drinking it on the rock.
Ooh, that sounds good.
Actually,
that sounds really good.
I'm pretty happy with it. And what are you drinking?
I am drinking a concoction that I'm calling a Blueberry Island. It is blueberry green tea and Malibu.
Oh, I'm happy with that.
Fresh, fruity, cold, summery. It's good.
It's storming here tonight, so I think that I picked a good drink to go with the mood.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
So, Mr. Hall, what have you been watching or reading or both?
I'm boring. I'm still reading Will White's Cradle. I finished a book the other day and I could not bring myself to read something else.
Aww.
So I'm still going at it. They're really good, and I've been thoroughly sucked in.
If there's one thing that you are, it's tenacious, and I do appreciate that about you.
It's just a really good series, and I just really want to finish it, but it's taking forever. But yeah, I'm still working on that, and I'm getting into I caught up, and I'm getting into the new season of The Witcher, so.
No.
Good stuff.
Nice.
Yeah. What are you into this week?
Well, I've caught myself up on the Star Trek Strange New Worlds. Can't even tell you how awesome it is. I just love it. It's beautiful. But
well, that's good.
What am I reading? Absolutely nada. Sorry,
rude.
Folks out there. Yeah, rude. I've been stuck on my latest outline. And I find that when I'm really trying to hyper-focus on my world and come up with solutions for it, I have a hard time delving into other people's worlds. It's fine if it's a TV show, I can do it. But when it's reading, it just pulls me away too far from where my brain needs to be. So I'm not reading this week, so don't judge me.
I know TV and film it's a different media, so it hits a little bit differently in the creative zones. What kind of world-building problems have you encountered and or solved in the last couple of weeks since we had an episode?
Nothing. Absolutely nothing. I'm working on words, prose, and outline, but I can share an interesting problem that took me like hours and hours and days to come up with, and it kind of worked out for everyone's magical ability in my world, it's affected by an infinity, and the infinity is assigned at the moment you take a breath, your first breath in life.
Right. And
I've worked through it, and it's like astrology, but I want it to be earth-based. So all of the things that determine, what your affinity is, what quote-unquote sign you are, is based on earth-based stuff. And it took me a long time to do, and now that I've completely spent, 40 hours working on that structure, I'm probably going to use it for 0.01% of my book.
That's how it goes.
But I needed
Crazy
to have it worked
amounts
out.
Of work and research and world building for like one throwaway line.
Exactly. It will be just a couple of lines, but I needed to make sure it matched. I just needed to make sure that.
Yep.
Yeah. Because I want this to be a series. Yeah.
I had that problem with Trials of Tiarsis. I had one line that I wanted to use, and I wasn't sure if it was accurate, and I did entirely too much research for one line. Yep. I feel you.
But that's what our writers / ADD / world building brains do. We just have to make sure that we get this one thing right. I just can't. Some things I can just feel right about. I don't care if it's completely accurate. I don't care. But other things, I just get this, hyper focus on it, and I have to know every detail.
Yep. No, I completely understand. I was worried about that one line, and I think we've talked about it before, but one line specifically about how to rig a sailing ship. And I'm like, there's going to be one person that's going to read this, and if it's not right, I'm going to hate myself.
See, and for mine, nobody would know this is right or wrong because I made it up, right? I completely made it up. But for consistency's sake, I want to make sure that I have the rules in place so that I can use it in another book, right? Or maybe later in this one. I just wanted to make sure I had those rules in place so I didn't have to backwards engineer it.
Absolutely. Consistency is important and details are important. That's 90% of world building is details. So I completely understand.
And have you been working on any world building problems?
Top Secret Project is done and had its preliminary edit. I'm waiting for some betas on that. But in the meantime, I'm slowly working my way back into book 3 of my trilogy. Made a little bit of progress in the hundreds of words last night. Yay me. It's the first time in a long time that book's seen any action whatsoever. But my current issue is deciding how many characters to bring around right away after a 10-year time jump. So it's not exactly world building, but it's definitely a thing that I need to figure out. Because there's a lot that can change in 10 years, and there's a lot of stuff character-wise that needs to be worked through, but I'm trying to figure out how to do it without it feeling like a dump, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I do know what you mean. Yeah. So your world is going to grow up in 10 years, and you need to step back into it.
Yep.
So that nobody is jarred. Yeah.
Yep.
That's a tough. That's, like you said, more of a writing problem. But no, it's still world building because your world, like I said, your world changes.
Exactly. You go from an infant kingdom that's been around for a couple of months to, hey, we've been here for 10 years. My main character has grown up by 10 years. Like, my whole crew has grown up by 10 years. My side characters have grown up by 10 years. That one character's little sister that was 6 and wanted to go to magic school is 16 now and probably in magic school. And do I mention that? Do I bring it up? Do I bring it around? Yeah, it's complicated.
It's complicated.
It's complicated.
If it was easy, everybody would do it.
All right. Don't write a trilogy. The third one sucks.
Yeah.
Writing it
Write
sucks.
Write a trilogy, but plan it first.
Rude. I don't like you. I don't plan things. You know this.
I know. Rude. I love teasing you about it.
I know.
Every week, we like to share one sentence from our current works in progress. A single sentence, absolutely no context. Then we let you folks know if we're planning on keeping it or throwing it away, if we have to let our darling die. So, Mr. Derrick, ready for Darlings Dead or Alive?
Ready as I'm gonna be.
What you got?
The whole world is weird. Our lives are just a symptom.
I love that line. I loved it when I read it, and I loved it right now.
It's a good line.
It's a good line. Yeah.
It's a good conversation all around, but it's a good line. So I like that one. I don't think it's going to go anywhere. It might get tweaked, but I don't think it's going to go anywhere. What about you?
Let's see. The stone was as stubborn as the glacier that fathered it and did not want to change at first, but Grandfather Nukuluk was persuasive and had a voice like sunlight sprinkled with dew.
Oh, that's lovely.
Lovely.
Lovely jubbly.
It's just lovely.
No, it's lovely. It's very sweet and descriptive.
Good.
Way more descriptive than I ever get. No, that's awesome.
I know.
I like that.
I know. That's the difference between that's one difference between our writing styles.
I like to let the reader decide what something looks like. Unless it's so important that I need to explain it in detail. I try to leave my descriptions a little bit vague where the reader can make up their own mind.
Well, that's fine if you're talking about things that they've already learned about. If they know what a human looks like, you don't have to give them a description. But if you're describing a creature they've never seen before...
Well, yeah. Like, if something needs a description, then that's fine. Book 2, I had a fight scene in the middle of the desert where a bunch of random creatures popped out of the sand and attacked my little traveling party. And my description was pretty vague. Let's see. Yeah, and I don't have that book pulled up, or I would go read it. But basically just, creatures with too many legs covered in hard plates. Make of that what you will. Like, it's not crazy descriptive, but it's enough to put an image in people's heads. And everybody that I've talked to, their image is different, and I love that.
Yeah, I can see that. And I think that that's really useful, right? Is that some things you do want to do that. I actually like to describe enough in a way that describes the mood of a setting more than the actual setting. Of course, we have to ground people. We have to tell them whether it's day or night. We have to tell them, are they in a cold place or the hot place?
Bah.
But I'd rather...
You got better things to talk about than the weather.
Yes, but if they're wearing a parka and on the beach, it doesn't make no sense unless the beach is frozen over. But it don't matter. It don't matter.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's be clear. My setting is a character unto itself.
Yes, it is. It very much is.
So it gets described as much as any character would, and hopefully never more than a character would.
That's a good point. Yeah, you don't want to overdo it. You don't want to pull a Tolkien.
I am no Tolkien. I don't have the patience for that.
There's
I really
only
don't.
one, and I hate it when people try to be Tolkien because it just never works.
I can't. I don't have the patience. I don't have no. Nope. I will never describe something more than a couple sentences long.
Oh, there you go. No 5 pages talking about one leaf.
And never.
No.
I say never, and I hope I keep to that promise.
Never say never, Xtina.
Exactly. Never say never. Never say never.
Never say never. Well, I'm going to add one more thing to this, and then we can move on. If I do revisit something, I will describe it differently or describe a different part of it.
Well,
if
that's
you go back
interesting.
to the same place, I'll mention something different about that room or that building or that valley or that town or whatever. It builds on the description that's already there without being repetitive or overbearing.
Well, let's not forget that the characters themselves are in a different place in their life when they go back to a place.
Exactly.
So they are going to see things differently. They're going to see things they haven't seen before, right? Mm-hmm. So you always want to describe a setting that's based on how the POV character would see it.
Yeah.
And every POV character, if you've done this right, is going to see the same spot differently.
Uh-huh. Exactly. And that's why I do that. I mentioned that to somebody one time. They're like, I never thought about that. I'm like, well, if you visit the same place 5 years apart, you're going to see it slightly differently. So why not?
Exactly.
Yep. All right. on to the point of the show, now that we've digressed for 15 minutes. The point of the show and our favorite game. Each week, we roll a d20, which helps us randomly choose from our perpetual list of 20 scenarios. And then we talk about how it would affect our worlds. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Let's see. Number 10. What if there were no seasons?
Well, the only way there could be no seasons would be either they live on a particular place on the earth that is either so far away from or so close to their sun that it doesn't change, right? Hawaii doesn't really have seasons. Well, they do. They have a monsoon season and a not monsoon season.
Mm-hmm.
And their lifestyle is adapted to that. The only other reason why you would not be able to change seasons would be... did we talk about this? Tatooine, right? We talked about this before where they had multiple suns, so it was always hot.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I think we mentioned that at one point, and I think at some point I mentioned an example from Paolini's sci-fi, To Sleep in a Sea of Stars. They visit a planet that is solar locked. It doesn't spin on an axis, and it doesn't orbit. It just sort of sits there. So you have an ice side and an oh god, we're all going to die side, and a very thin line right down the middle where people can live.
So if I lived in a world, if my world, the one I'm writing right now, they didn't change the seasons, I think it'd be boring. So I'd have to find a way to make it not boring. I mean, I think it's boring for the character. If they're going through, not boring for the character, boring for the reader. I think the reader likes to see movement of time by use of seasons. So how else are you going to show the reader movement of time without seasons? Today there's 3 inches of snow, tomorrow there's 6, the next day it melts. I don't know. So how do you show, right? You can write a book that keeps saying, and 6 days later, and 2 months later, and this went on for 4 months. But I think it adds a little bit of seasoning, not to be play on the word, not pun not intended. To use, you say don't write about the weather, but I think it can help with showing time moving forward and people moving. Shows movement of character.
I write about the weather too. I didn't say don't. I just said you have better things to talk about.
I mean, there's been complete movies where it's done over a couple of days, and of course the season doesn't change.
Right.
But let's get back. If I were to get back to the intent of the question for our podcast, what if there were no seasons in my world? What would that look like? How would that look for my characters? I think that if there were no seasons, I don't know. You go.
Seasons. Okay. So there's actually a shocking amount of depth to this question, because if you're going to build a world without seasons, what is the climate? Is it hot? Is it cold? Is it somewhere in the middle and temperate? Is it, are we dealing with a jungle? Are we dealing with tundra? What are we dealing with? So if we say that all of that still varies based on geography and topography, you're still going to have, assuming a heliocentric model like we have, even without seasons, you're still going to have a hot zone around the equator. You're going to have it colder at the poles, just because that's the nature of how things are. The entire world is not going to be Tatooine. Because you still have that variance. So, in my world, I don't think a whole lot would change. I think whatever season the the wheel lands on is just kind of where it would stay. Not a lot would change. If you're dealing with winter, you're going to have food shortages because you have no growing season. You're going to end up having to import food from other places where they can grow it. If you're dealing with summer, you might have problems with water or that sort of thing, depending particularly on where you are. So economically, it would 100% be a challenge to deal with. As far as the actual characters go, I really don't think that much would change. I mean, you live your life regardless of the weather, right? So I don't think for the characters a whole lot would change, but the world as a whole would have some serious economic issues. Trade would become much more important for things like food and that sort of thing. Anything you can't grow yourself, you're going to have to find it somewhere and import it. Prices would go up. You're going to have issues with that.
So actually what you're describing right here is a world that once had seasons and suddenly doesn't, because you're talking about prices going up and stuff like this. In a world that never had seasons, prices wouldn't be going up. They might be more than the next world over.
You're right. I didn't think about that. Yeah, you have a point, but so I tend to look at these questions as, what if this happened to my world as it sits right now? So
okay,
in that case, you would have prices going up, you would have trade issues, you would have food shortages, water shortages, depending on the season. And it would be a serious problem. If it's always been that way, you're going to be used to the system, right? You will have adapted to it always being 90 degrees or 100 degrees wherever you happen to be, or always being below freezing wherever you happen to be. So if it's always been, it's not a problem. If it's something new, it's a big problem. So
I think it would make for a pretty interesting story to talk about a world where it's moving to a singular type season, you know, for swaths of people on the planet. It might be interesting, but only if it was sudden. I mean, we're going through a global climate change right now, and a story would have to go over, 100 years before you'd see a huge difference in the world. It's a slow process. I mean, I love the idea of the Earth. I mean, they're talking about it's time for the Earth to change its rotation. And that process of what would happen would be an interesting story. Of course, there'd be a moment when everything would fall off the Earth because it wasn't rotating as it turned backwards. But let's just pretend like that wasn't happening.
Oh, that'll be fun. Although I don't think it's actually... Is it the rotation? I'm probably showing my ignorance here, but I don't think it's the rotation that holds everybody to the Earth. Because centrifugal force would force us away from it. By all rights, we should get flung off.
Wait a minute. So I just saw a talk on this. And what was he talking about? So we're spinning around. And well, actually, you're right. So that I'm wrong. But what I think it was Neil Tyson guy, Neil deGrasse Tyson, was talking about if the world had switched its revolution to the other way, its rotation to the other way, it'd have to stop. And once it stopped, everything would be crashing around. So because of, like you said, centrifugal force, right? So you stop it, and all the water wouldn't stop moving right away. It would backlash.
Yeah,
it would rubber band
You'd have
back.
Tsunamis all over the place. It'd be nasty.
And it's just not water. It's even buildings, right? They're built with. If you I can't remember how he explained it, but the Earth. I mean, people. There wouldn't be many humans that survived that, but once it started turning the other direction, it'd be interesting to see how that would change seasons pretty drastically, because the axis isn't changing, just the rotation. So
yeah, for sure.
Weird. But what if my world had no seasons? Well, I actually like thinking about this, and I haven't really thought about it before because my character grew up in Alaska, way north Alaska. And they do have multiple seasons. They do have, spring, summer, fall. Spring, summer, fall, winter. Sorry, all four. But once Anisha moved down south, those seasons would look completely different for her. And I had never considered how I write that so that my character experiences that. And what does that mean?
So I have some personal experience in covering thousands of miles and dealing with seasons. Where I grew up, spring happened in early February. I grew up in the deep south of the U.S., and spring, flowers in bloom, trees turning green, temperatures in the 80s, like spring, full-blown spring happened in February. I then moved up the East Coast to roughly Washington, D.C., that neighborhood, and spring happened in April. And then I moved from there out here to Montana, and it is currently July, and spring is happening. So, yeah.
I've been there too.
It's a thing. And it was very weird to get
and
used
what's
to.
really... It is very weird, and you're talking about not only getting weird because of, like you said, months of the year, your head wrapping around it, right? But also school, the school seasons, when they end and when they start, is based off the seasons from where you live. I mean, when I was in California, we were in school till late June, July almost, almost to my birthday in July. But then you move up to the northern states, and here in New England, May, they're graduating. And it's just,
that's the way it is
weird.
Here. They run middle of August to like the middle of May. And if we have a really bad winter, they'll run to the end of May.
I mean, the whole time I was growing up, I never started school in August.
Yeah.
I never did. It was always, August was my play month. That was summertime, baby. And where I live now, August is fall.
Yeah, I have a friend in Arizona. I think they're in the Phoenix area, and their kids start school in July. Like, start back the last week of July. And I think they only get about a month for summer break. Like, they finish up 1st of June and start back the last week of July, or the middle of June and the last week of July. So about a month, maybe a week or two more. But yeah, it's weird how seasons affect things like that. You don't think about it until you think about it. And then when you do, it's just like, oh, crap. It does matter.
I mean, right. They affect your growing season. What you eat and when. I've always thought of squash as a autumn, a harvest, a fall, plant. And I have friends that say, "Oh no, goodness, it's a summer food." Like, no, it's not. What are you talking about? No, it's not. So the seasons are going to have a great impact in how your world experiences the seasons, whether it's 1 or 3 or all of them, and how long and how deep each one is. It's going to affect your world a lot.
Well, I mean, that's sort of the whole premise of Game of Thrones and Ice and Fire.
The movie is a book.
The whole world in general, because winter is coming and you don't know how long it's going to last. In years. It could be 10, 15, 20 years of winter, and then it could be 10, 15, 20 years of summer, but there's not really an in-between, and you never know. Which I always thought was a really interesting concept to build a world around.
I think it's an interesting concept, but something I just thought of the other day about this idea was that from page 1, it was probably like page 3 actually, he said, winter is coming. And if you know anything about story structuring or story building, you want to, if you can, set up a time clock, right? We have to get this done by the end of the clock, right? And he did that brilliantly with those three little tiny words. You always feel like you're trying to beat the time.
Yeah,
it was brilliant.
You're always pressing against that deadline. So yeah.
Yes. And I'm right now, I could have put that in my world building, is I'm trying to come up with, design, or determine a time clock, a time bomb, to help me get my story.
Oh, yeah.
Help me give Anisha impetus to get done what she needs to get done. And I'm having a hard time coming up with a believable one that fits my world. But I'm sure.
I didn't consciously do it, but now that I think about it, I did have time clocks in both
of
my first two books.
Yeah.
Interesting.
You did. And I think
cool.
I have one for this book. I just don't know how to play with it quite yet. So.
Yeah, if you're trying to do it on purpose, it's tricky, but I just stumbled into it, so
and
that's cool.
It's not so much that yes, it's always tricky, but my issue is, when do I introduce the time clock, right? And so, depending upon what your time clock is, now you have to have your character aware of things in the world. If you don't want them to be aware of things in the world quite yet, then they can't know about that time clock. So it is tricky.
Just have them go with their gut. They have a bad feeling about something but don't know what.
Yeah, that
mention it a few times and then
that
fill
doesn't
in later.
fly. No, let it fly. No.
What?
Well, they're not. Everyone's not Spider-Man. Sorry.
You don't have to be Spider-Man to have a gut feeling.
They're not Han Solo either. I got a bad feeling about this.
Never tell me the odds. All right. Anything else you want to add to this?
Yes. You ready? Well, that was fun.
Okay.
If you're a world builder, newbie or not, and would like to be on our show, we would love to have you. This includes, TTRPG game masters, authors, D&D people, writers, just people that like to create worlds. We'd love to have you on the show. You can get a hold of us through our website, whatifsouthisup.com. You can leave us a message there. You can find me on Uniquely Xtina in the Clock app, as my favorite co-host likes to say, on my website or Facebook, which is uniquelyxtina.com. And we'd love to have you on the show. We need you. We need them all.
Yeah, we need everybody. Come hang out with us, talk with us, share your stories and worlds with us. And everyone who listens, we love hearing about it. We love talking about it, obviously, or we wouldn't be here. So please come join us. As always, we're looking for more what-if questions to add to our list. If your world has something interesting about it and you'd like to pose it to us to see how it plays out in our worlds, we would love to hear from you. I can be found on the internet at DerrickHallAuthor.com, but you can also find me as D. Hall Author on Facebook, the aforementioned Clock app, and just about anywhere else.
And with that, we would like to say thank you one last time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Toodles. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Never tell me the odds.
Laugh it up, fuzzball.
Goodbye.